Alien Jesus 2. The Jesus Seed. Metro Radio.
The Night Owls, Alan Robson with you, and this fantastic square loaded full of people even at this time of night. We have so many people mooching around, trying to perhaps sneak around the corner and see the various museums or St. Peter's Basilica. And of course, just around the corner you have that amazing ceiling where some of Michelangelo's greatest paintings are depicted. For more than 1,000 years, the papal state held sway. And what a place it is. I mean, Christians from all over the world come here. So why is it important that we did? Well, we have to question everything. And this is a state that is built on money. They have art in Vatican City that could solve all of the problems of poverty on planet Earth at a stroke. Why don't they do it? Well, because for the past 1,000 to 2,000 years they've tried to get money off people to make their lifestyles grand. Now, most scholars accept that a character called Jesus Christ is at the very centre of the Christian Bible. But who was he? Was he just the son of a carpenter from a small town? Because those who follow him say, of course he wasn't. They believe he was the Son of God. The woman who bore him was only 12 years old, and the man Joseph claimed he had never had sex with her. Now, if you ignore the possibility of a young man trying to avoid getting into trouble off her parents, well, then you come across something far more intriguing. The character, Jesus, a name not associated with the Middle East at all, yet a common name on the other side of the world. Despite growing up in a time of ignorance, this man knew intricacies about the human body long before medical science would have that information. This person also had knowledge of future events, the destruction of Jerusalem for one, and many others that no one could have prophesied. He also understood spiritual forces that work all around us, including life and spirit, ghosts and entities, things that scientists are only now starting to really look into. Firstly, let's use the science, beginning with that star over Bethlehem. It was definitely not a star. Had it been a star, the effect that it would have had on the Earth would have been catastrophic. It would have tipped the planet on its axis, killing everyone on it. So it was not a star. It would also have impacted on other planets and satellites in our solar system. So once you know that it could not have been that, then you need to ask, well, what was this bright shining thing that moved across the sky? Now, in a time before anyone had seen the lights of an aeroplane or a spacecraft, surely you would think that a star was moving across the sky. Listen to how the early Christians described this craft in the Bible. The star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. Now, most scholars insist that the three kings were aliens, as in the original scrolls that record this event, they never describe how they get there, where they were from, and more importantly, where they went. No camels, no carts, no transportation of any kind. This image was added 1,200 years later. How did they get there? Or did they come in the light of that star? In Luke they talk about the angels of the Lord coming down, flying creatures that returned to the light. Now, that light is what the humans declared was heaven, but more likely returning to a craft or a ship of some kind. So if Jesus was then from another planet, surely other things would happen during his life to point to that. Well, the Bible is full of extraterrestrial proof that have been edited out by the Christians because they wanted people to believe the information they wanted you to believe. In John 12, It writes, Jesus was in trouble with people not believing him, and he said, Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came from the bright light hovering over them. Now this is really important, because the Christians rewrote the incident in the Bible as, Father, glorify thy name. Then a voice came from heaven. Now, it was not a voice from heaven. It was a voice from the bright light hovering over them. Later in John, the Christians say it was the voice of an angel. But it obviously wasn't. But they had to put their spin on it so that they could keep power over the people by lying. So even during Jesus' baptism, there was another, perhaps alien encounter that they had to rewrite. When Jesus was being baptized by John the Baptist in the River Jordan, the Bible, in Mark 1, says, Heaven is torn open, and the Spirit descended like a dove, and a voice came from heaven. And remember, heaven is what they called the bright flying light in the sky. And one came down as this event took place, along with a creature, a spirit that could fly. Now, if you go through the Bible carefully, you can identify 26,000 episodes that sound, even to the skeptic, that they were definitely otherworldly interventions. Take another famous event, the Transfiguration, when Jesus took people up to a mountaintop. In Matthew 17, the book says, there he was, transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, his clothes became as white as light, and there before them Moses and Elijah talking to Jesus. Now you've got to remember, Moses and Elijah by this time were dead, but they were talking to Jesus. The Christians had to edit that, and they dropped the line, he shone like the sun as he stepped into the light of heaven, and others stepped out of his kind, and they spoke in his tongue. Now that's a different sentence altogether. He shone like the sun, he stepped into the light of heaven, this floating craft, and others stepped out of his kind, inferring that he was a different kind to us, and they spoke in their tongue. Important changes. Others came out of a craft and spoke in a different language. Later, the Bible says, a voice from the cloud, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. But Jesus came down and touched them. Get up, he said. Don't be afraid. Now, before it was rewritten, it read, a loud booming noise came from the heart of the light as a circle of silver spun. All fell to the ground as it shook. All men were in terror. The heart of the light as a circle of silver spun. It sounds like a spacecraft landing. People getting off, and then the craft left, booming onto the ground. Why else would these scholars mistranslate such obvious things, unless it would have a huge bearing on their faith? Now, Jesus' final moments on earth give you, what some people believe, direct proof of alien intervention. Even the Bible in Acts 1, I can't phrase it in any other way than that of spacemen and alien craft. This is what the Bible says. He was taken up before their very eyes, and a cloud hid him from sight. They were looking up into the sky when suddenly 2 men in white stood beside him. Jesus said, why just stand there looking at the sky? The same Jesus who has been taken from you into heaven will come back in the same way. He left by stepping into heaven. That bright light that came down to earth and left on it, returning the same way. In Matthew 24, they will see the Son of Man coming here on clouds of the sky with great power and great glory. And look at all of the miracles. Most of them are possible of being done today using technology. Technology that at that time we didn't have. But what if Jesus and those like him, those others that stepped out of that shiny silver thing, what if they were from the stars? If UFOs and aliens were involved in the story of Jesus, and in the Quran, you can understand why churches and faiths don't want to deal with it. Yet every day, the evidence of alien intervention continues to grow stronger, and also direct proof of ecclesiastical plotting against it. The Pope has a scroll found alongside the Dead Sea Scrolls locked away in the Vatican, not 300 feet away from where I am now. And he has said, this is the Pope, that if what was on it was ever released, it would have a devastating effect on conventional religion. Now that's what the Pope, the leader of the Catholic faith, says. If the truth was known, what right does he have to stop the world knowing the truth? Within the past 20 years, other scrolls have been found, including one set that got scholars very excited. The archaeologist who found it wrote, "As it was found in a very dry tomb, we will be able to read it all, changing our knowledge of the most ancient of histories." And then everyone waited for that to happen. When a representative from the church said, "Unfortunately, the scroll is damaged beyond repair by water." Convenient. But how is something that was in a place totally dry, in a very dry tomb, totally wet? Unless you wet it on purpose to destroy it. Alan Robson with you in the heart of Vatican City. We're going to be traveling all over planet Earth to show you things, to tell you things that will make your head spin. Tonight, Alien Jesus 2, The Jesus Seed.
Alien Jesus 2, The Jesus Seed, Metro Radio.
Now, just like our first foray into Alien Jesus, we're going to be going through some of the evidence that we want to throw at you so that you can make your own mind up about whether or not aliens have been here before, and maybe we are their seed, their alien seed, their Jesus seed. Now, for a lot of years, people have rang up the Night Owls and said, but the Bible was written by the people who were there at the time. It never was. But the interesting thing about the stories in the Bible, for something like 30,000 years before the Bible was even thought of, Chinese historians had all of the stories from the Bible. Samson and Delilah, although they were called different names. They had the Technicolor Dreamcoat story under different names. They had Noah and the Ark, different names. But they found some writings in the desert. And those writings also completely copied everything that was in the Old Testament. Now, this is not anything you can fake. 30-odd thousand years before Christ, they were writing about Christ figures, messiahs, and all of the stories that were eventually put into the Bible, copied, stolen, plagiarized. Have a listen to this.
In 1851, in what is now known as Iraq, archaeologist and explorer Sir Austin Henry Layard discovered a library with 22,000 tablets containing what we know to be the earliest writings on Earth. The writings date back to over 6,000 years ago when the region was known as Mesopotamia, Sumer, and Babylon. Amongst these vast writings is a story which mirrors the book of Genesis in the Bible. It tells a story of a great flood which reshaped the face of the planet Earth and all of her inhabitants. It tells a story of a tower built and the creation of the spoken word. One of these scrolls includes a star map of what appears to be a sun and its planets. The writings include detailed descriptions and maps of our solar system matching what we know today and beyond. It includes a 10th planet in an orbit between Mars and Jupiter. It is written that the 10th planet Nibiru was thrust into our solar system and collided with the planet Tiamat. The remaining bulk of Tiamat over time became Eridu, the Earth as we know it, and the rest of her became the asteroid belt. In retrograde to the other 9 planets, Nibiru took orbit around our Sun in a long ecliptic or apogee. Lasting 3,600 years, it passes between Mars and Jupiter. In recent years, based on the patterns of our known solar system, astronomers have been looking for a planet with this same orbit. In search of this planet, they discovered the planet Pluto. The search continues. According to the ancient texts, this detailed information was given to them by the Anunnaki, or those who from heaven to earth came. They described the Anunnaki as a reptilian race of gods which came to the earth in fiery ships from their home planet of Nibiru, the 10th planet. It is written that these Anunnaki came to the earth to mine gold and other elements to serve in protecting the atmosphere of their distant home planet. After a workers' revolt, the Anunnaki rulers began to genetically alter Cro-Magnon man to create a slave race, resulting in the human race. It was said that we were created by the gods in clay vessels. It is written that man was forbidden to depict the Anunnaki in their actual form. Just prior to the Great Flood, the bulk of the Anunnaki would return home, leaving numbers of them behind to watch over the earth. Anu was king.
Assigned to Anu to heed his instructions. 300 in the heavens he stationed as a god. The ways of earth to define from the heaven. And on earth 600 he made reside. After he all their instructions had ordered, to the Anunnaki of heaven and of earth, he allotted their assignments.
This story of reptilian gods from the heavens creating man is not at all uncommon. It in fact can be found in most every region of our planet. In Japan, emperors claim descent from dragon gods who came from the sky. Australian Aborigines teach of a reptilian race which lives underneath the earth and governs over men. They believe they are descendants of a race of dragon humans. China teaches the serpent queen Nukua interbred with man. India calls these reptilian gods Nagas and claim they seeded their royal families. Throughout the Middle East it is believed a serpent race created man. The book of Genesis tells of giants who came from the heavens to breed with the daughters of man. They are called the Nephilim. In Africa they call them Chitauri, children of the serpent. The royal kings of Africa claim descent from serpent gods who came from the sky. In South America, the Mayans teach that their ancestors were the people of the serpent. The Aztecs were said to be created by a serpent woman. In America, the Hopi Indians believe sky gods came to earth to breed with their women and referred to them as their snake brothers. The word Sioux means snakes, and Iroquois means serpents. It seems the only places you will not find this historical story is where the history has been methodically destroyed. The descendants of King Anu in Sumeria and Babylon can be traced throughout time. The pharaohs of Egypt were from the bloodlines of the Babylonian kings. The rulers of the Roman Empire can be traced to Egyptian hierarchy. All throughout Europe, the royal families can be traced back to the great Roman emperors. 34 of the presidents of the United States are directly descended from European royalty, with the remaining 8 who are only closely related to these same bloodlines. In 1934, President Franklin Roosevelt placed the Great Seal, originally created in 1782 by the Freemasons, on the dollar bill. Represented in the Great Seal is a pyramid and the all-seeing eye, known to be used by the elusive society, the Illuminati. Strung together in conspiratorial confusion are secret societies such as the Illuminati, the Freemasons, and the Bohemian Club. In 1917, National Geographic did a story on a place in Montreal, California called Bohemian Grove. The story reports a place where the world's elite, members of the Bohemian Club, retreat to in late July and conduct an ancient occult ceremony called the Cremation of Care. Every year in July, the world's leaders, media moguls, and members of the World Bank spend 2 weeks of what is known as a men-only retreat at the Grove. In the year 2000, ABC television show World of Wonder infiltrated Bohemian Grove with hidden cameras and aired the video on the BBC. The video shows the large mass of men donning red and black robes and once again conducting the Cremation of Care ceremony. The altar is at the base of a 200-foot owl, the Babylonian symbol of the god Moloch, the god of human sacrifice. In the video, a body is delivered upriver to the altar where it is set on fire. Upon being aired, members of the Bohemian Club reported that the ceremony is a put-on, merely done for entertainment and fun. This history tells a story of our world leaders having a deep involvement in satanic tradition, worshipping our reptilian overlords, serpent gods. It poses the possibility that we may be and have always been enslaved by our leaders, no different than sheep or cattle. There is an endless amount of information out there which supports this.
Alien Jesus 2, The Jesus Seed, Metro Radio.
Now, something I want to talk about, Alan, which I find really interesting, is all the different people that live around the world, all the different tribes, everyone that's existed, all their stories that they have about history, stuff that took place, all are essentially the same, aren't they? And yet, they were thousands of miles apart. How could that be?
Yeah. If you look at the ancient history of people like Maoris in New Zealand, Aborigines in Australia, and compare them with the Aztec tribes or the Mayans, the root's the same. The stories essentially are the same. Funnily enough, if you compare Egypt to South America, a lot of the architecture is incredibly similar, and yet they were building it thousands of miles apart, and those cultures never ever met. And yet there's one tribe that I think sums this up more than any other. From Africa, it's the Dogon tribe. Let's hear their story. Now, in West Africa, in southern Mali, there's a tribe of people called the Dogon. Hardly the likeliest source of advanced astronomical data, yet, according to a study of those people during the late 1940s, Dogon priests speak of a tiny secret star that they call Po, and they state that it's composed of an exceedingly heavy substance, and it orbits the dog star Sirius in a 50-year cycle, pursuing an elliptical path. Now, how would they know that? Because there is a star, Sirius B, first recorded scientifically in 1862, and so dense that a cubic meter of its matter, a cubic meter, would weigh 20,000 tons. Moreover, its orbit is precisely where the tribesmen of Dogon describe it. Now, the fact that Sirius B is completely invisible to the human eye, it was only photographed for the first time as recently as 1970. So how come tribesmen in the middle of the desert would know anything about it? Their explanation is even more remarkable. They claim to have received their information, that also includes knowledge of Saturn's rings and the 4 major moons of Jupiter, from a race of amphibious space travellers called Nomos that visited the Earth long ago from the Sirius star system. Just recently, other people have revisited the Dogon, asking them about this amazing revelation, something that's impossible for them to know. And when they were talking to them, they said, there's a second star orbiting Sirius at right angles to Sirius B, and they call it Emiya, son of woman. But it's presently unknown to science. So what will scientists say when they discover that that star exists too?
In May of 2008, a startling proclamation was issued by the Vatican. For the first time in its 2,000-year history, the Catholic Church acknowledged the possibility that intelligent life could exist on other planets, and that a belief in extraterrestrials did not contradict a belief in God.
Which means, of course, that we are now entering an age in which the universe is beginning to be conceived in different ways from what it was before. And if it is a reality for us, why could it not have been a reality for other beings in the universe who could have visited our Earth and perhaps guided culture in ancient times?
But just what sparked this sudden turnaround in religious thought? Could the Church have been influenced by recent scientific discoveries?
You can make the argument that we are, in fact, just replacing angels of 2,000 years ago with high-tech angels now, and that we have this inner need to feel we're not alone in the universe, that we're scientific people, and we would be embarrassed to call them angels because we've stopped believing in that kind of superstitious stuff, but we still believe in aliens from other planets.
In 2002, the Mars Odyssey spacecraft detected enormous reservoirs of ice beneath the Martian surface. The presence of ice and the possibility of water suggested that life could be sustained or even generated on another planet. After decades of orbiting space shuttles and robotic rovers, the idea of sending man back into space, to Mars and beyond, ignited the imagination and brought back the notion that mankind and alien beings had crossed paths before.
When I was a young man, I was educated as a strict Catholic in a boarding school. And there we had to make translations of part of the Bible, Greek to Latin, Latin to German. For example, the first book of Moses. Before the Lord descends on the holy mountain, Moses was ordered to construct a gate around the mountain, otherwise the Israelites would be damaged. I was shocked. I said, this is impossible. My God, he would never use first a gate to protect himself or to protect the Israelites. What are they talking about? And now the work started. I started to read thousands of pages of the beginning of religions, of every mythology. It's always the same story. Of course, with different names, with different heroes. Somebody descends from the sky to the humans. Our forefathers could not understand it. They believed that these are some gods. I was shocked. I asked the question, were primitive humans influenced by extraterrestrials, not gods? And if it all was like I suggested, what is the proof? So you start trying to find at least indications. That's what I have done now for at least 45 years. You have pictorial evidence, you have artifacts in archaeology, and you have what's come out of the old literature. Hundreds of indications which you cannot deny anymore.
What it means is that we need new explanations for human origins, that perhaps we're not alone in the universe, and that human-like beings came to this planet from some other planet elsewhere in the cosmos. I think that's a very good idea myself.
And it really excited people. It was a new way of looking at the past, looking at ancient civilizations, and it put this very modern space-age spin to the whole thing.
Now, you've just been hearing how the Catholic Church have been unable to keep these stories down. They have a huge inability worldwide to stop people asking questions about their faith. Now, we know they've had a lot of other problems recently with the child sex abuse all over planet Earth, and a whole host of other problems with the introduction of women and what have you. And yet, essentially what you have to ask yourself is, if alien life ever visited Earth, everything that's written in the Bible is incorrect. Now, if you take that premise, you can understand why the Vatican was so upset when Erich von Däniken wrote his book, Chariots of the Gods, suggesting that maybe all of the saints, all of the religious Bible stories had an explanation, and an explanation that fit everything. Let's hear from the man himself. Here's Erich von Däniken being interviewed.
How, for example, could a centuries-old map chart a landmass that has only recently been discovered?
It would tend to indicate that the map was made at a time when Antarctica was ice-free, which would be many millions of years ago.
And how could a primitive civilization know how to harness electricity or even build a computer?
This was tantamount to finding a jet airplane in the tomb of King Tut.
In the book of Ezekiel, for example, the prophet claims that he witnessed a visitation by heavenly beings coming down from the skies aboard a fantastic flying machine. It's a highly detailed description of an alien sighting.
This is incredible. Ezekiel not only describes what he sees, he also describes what he hears. He describes the whole thing as being the splendorness of God.
The prophet also details several four-faced winged creatures who appeared in the likeness of men and who traveled upon a gleaming wheeled device.
Inside the splendors of God, there was something like a throne, and on this throne was a being sitting, looking like a human in glittering clothes. And beneath it, he saw some vehicles, he saw some wings. He describes the noise of the wings. He describes the noise of the wings with the thundering of a waterfall.
Ezekiel saw his wheel within a wheel. This sounds more high-tech than supernatural, and we can't suppose that people 3,000 years ago would understand the difference between the supernatural and high-tech.
But what if there is more to Ezekiel's heavenly visions than the imaginative insights of a religious man? What if there was a scientific foundation for them?
Yes, I once had the opportunity of meeting and spending time and traveling with a gentleman by the name of Joseph Blumrich. He was a senior chief engineer at NASA, person involved in the Mariner expedition to Mars. He was also in charge of the landing gear for the Mariner spaceship. And he told me himself that the idea of the design used for the Mariner spaceship that landed on Mars came to him from the reading of the biblical text in which there is talk about wheels within wheels. So here you have another example of a person of curiosity who conceives of these ideas.
Another biblical figure is the character of Enoch.
Enoch is not part of the Bible. In the Bible, in the Old Testament, you find maybe just one phrase about Enoch, that's all. But among the apocryphic texts, there are volumes and volumes, if you know them. You find the book of Enoch. Enoch is the first person in antiquity who writes in the first person. I did, I heard, I was there.
In one of the ancient texts, this great-grandfather of Noah is said to have been taken away by God for 300 years.
He was taken up to the sky. Up there he meets the highest, the so-called highest. In religion they call it God. He meets the highest, and the highest says to his servants, you teach this young man in our language, and then you teach him writing. So he writes books. Of course, he knows all these foreigners by name. He quotes them by name. He knows their profession. He knows which of these extraterrestrials was the astronomer. So Enoch is the only in first person, thousands of years ago, who gives some of the names of the extraterrestrials and gives some of their professions. How is this possible? We have an eyewitness, and nobody speaks about it. So I really was confused.
Why is it so absurd for aliens to come when it's completely acceptable for God to intervene in human history?
Alien Jesus 2. The Jesus Seed. Metro Radio.
Now, for those of you that remember our original Alien Jesus show, we were taking you all over planet Earth, showing you buildings that were quite simply impossible to build for 1,000 different reasons. Some of them using star signs that hadn't been discovered and wouldn't be for another 1,500 years. Some of them using building blocks that at the time would be impossible to move without using a crane. We also told you about things only seen from space that had been built on planet Earth all over South America. And yet, there was one puzzle that we are yet to explain. And I think this gentleman can. It's about a very, very special puzzle indeed.
In my opinion, The most significant piece of evidence that we have in this entire ancient astronaut puzzle is Puma Punku in the highland of Bolivia. While the pyramids at Giza are incredible feat of achievement, compared to Puma Punku, the pyramids are child play. Logic does not exist at Puma Punku because there we have megalithic structures which just lie about this entire site as if ripped apart by some sort of a great force.
The blocks of Puma Punku were so finely cut that they once perfectly interlocked, like the pieces of an elaborate puzzle. But with the nearest quarry over 10 miles away, how did these colossal stones, some weighing hundreds of tons, even get here?
We are talking about the place 4,000 meters over sea level. That means there are no trees up there, which you could use for rollers. Nothing grows except a few grasses and bushes.
I have stood in front of many monuments. However, Puma Punku takes the crown, because what we find there is so inexplicable, so inachievable, that the question remains, how was it done and for what purposes?
The Jesus Seed.
The pyramids were built by human hands, but with the assistance of extraterrestrial technology.
As one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Great Pyramid remains not only an archaeological mystery, but a geographical marvel. In 1877, author and theologian Joseph Seiss demonstrated that the Great Pyramid resides at the intersection of the longest line of latitude and the longest line of longitude, the exact center of all the landmass in the world. Also, each of its 4 sides aligns almost precisely with the 4 points of the compass, though such an instrument wasn't even designed until thousands of years later. But is it just mere coincidence that pyramid construction, very similar to that practiced in ancient Egypt, was also evolving halfway around the world?
There are pyramids on remote Pacific islands, and in India, and in Mexico. So this is something that's all over the world. Archaeologists haven't really been able to explain why dissimilar cultures, separated by huge oceans, are building the same structures and in many ways the same way.
Alan and Paolo from the Night Owls program, presenting the Jesus Seed. We're going to find out tonight whether you believe we are all descended from alien life from elsewhere in our solar system. Many people have wondered over the centuries, why is it that some people in the Far East have a yellowish skin? Why is it that we have a freckled skin? Why do the Native Americans who live in North America, similar temperatures to that of mainland Europe, why do they have a red skin? And many people believe that over the centuries, over the generations, over the eons of lost history, we descended from people from other planets. It sounds very far-fetched, and yet tonight we're going to lay it on, and then you can decide for yourself.
The Jesus Seed.
Alan Robson with you, the Jesus Seed. Now, Paolo, I know you've looked over the months and years at an awful lot of architecture, especially maybe the Egyptian and Middle Eastern architecture, where you see the Sphinx with a lion's head, you see gods with the head of a fox or the head of a falcon. Now, a lot of people were interested in that, but they thought that it was just being created by the imagination. And yet, now, a lot of scientists are believing that maybe the head of a falcon was just to sum up that the creature that they were depicting came down from the sky and could fly. The one with the face of a lion, the Sphinx, maybe they were physically a different shape to people on this planet. They were not necessarily invented by anyone, because at no time in Egyptian history do they say, we've created this thing to depict a god that we believe in. So maybe all of those creatures that have been assimilated with man were assimilated because they saw creatures from beyond the stars who had those characteristics, and none more keenly than the Sumerians.
I believe, personally, that the writings of the Sumerians 4,000 years ago, as chronicled by Zechariah Sitchin in his books, The Earth Chronicles, I believe that is the most logical and reasonable explanation that there is for how we came to be. Another planet in our solar system, that gods, super beings, live on this planet, that these beings come to Earth for the specific reason of mining gold, which they need to repair their atmosphere on their planet. They didn't like to mine. It was hard work. It wasn't like just putting trays in water and collecting the gold out every 2-3 weeks. They had to dig it out. They didn't like doing it, so they revolted, and they said, the Anunnaki did, to their leaders, we don't want to do this anymore. So the leaders said, all right, we'll make you a slave.
However, all over the world there's stories and things that cannot be explained where they've found creatures and have photographs of creatures. They've carried out autopsies on things that don't exist on this planet, and yet we have pictures of them. They are here. What the hell are they? We've got photographs of them. You're going to be able to see them on our website. However, let's hear about them first.
In May 2007, this strange creature was found on a farm in Mexico. The farmer drowned it out of fear. Since the end of 2008, researchers have been carrying out tests on the corpse, but the mystery is deepening. Even serious scientists are wondering if this creature comes from another planet. The tests showed that the being is not known to exist on Earth. Its body has characteristics of both lizards and humans. It also has a large brain, a sign that it was probably highly intelligent. There are frequent UFO sightings and reports of crop circles in the area, leading to the suspicion that the being was left behind by aliens. Farmers also reported seeing a second creature flee the scene.
This is Alan Robson on the Night Owls, the Jesus Seed. Have aliens visited this planet? And maybe we are their distant relatives. Were they our ancestors? That's the question you have to answer later on tonight. Now, the one thing that you keep hearing about all over America, there are people who claim that after being abducted by aliens, they had surgical marks on their body. In some cases, kidneys were removed, and nobody can remember why or when that happened. But surely, if anybody from another planet is messing with human bodies, there has to be some proof. And finally there was.
For the first time in history, one man is coming forward with tangible evidence that he claims is proof of an alien intelligence visiting Earth. Dr. Roger Lear is a surgeon from Southern California who has been performing operations on patients for over 30 years.
So far, 8 surgeries have been performed, and with the 8 surgeries, we have removed 9 objects. The commonality, of course, is that all the individuals are subjects of the alien abduction phenomena.
In 1996, he performed one of the first surgeries to remove an alien implant from the jaw of an alleged abductee.
The gentleman that we did the surgery on for the procedure to remove an object from the left jaw was in private industry, and he had a history of alien abduction.
As with most abductees, the patient was reluctant to come forward or to have his face publicly shown.
There is a certain stigma involved with abductees. They have innate fear about telling somebody about what happened. They may feel that they may lose their job, or their career may be in jeopardy, even financial loss. So there are some very practical things involved.
Dr. Lear described some of the extraordinary findings discovered during this amazing surgery.
There is no portal of entry. there's no evidence how the object got inside the body. Then when we look at the soft tissues that surround the object, we find there is no inflammatory response. This is impossible, because anything that enters the body should have an inflammatory response. And then thirdly, they are surrounded by a large number of nerve proprioceptors which are not anatomically correct.
Once the outer biological membrane was removed, it revealed a triangular-shaped object. This object was housed in yet another gray membrane. Remarkably, this inner membrane could not be cut, even with a surgical scalpel. The implant was then sent to Los Alamos National Laboratory for metallurgic testing.
We knew that when we got the initial report back from Los Alamos that we didn't have something that was common, because Los Alamos is a world-class laboratory and would not recommend further testing on anything that they didn't feel was strange. So it was the combination of elements that were in these objects that I think inspired them to advise us that more tests should be done.
The implants were then sent to New Mexico Tech Laboratory, where a battery of metallurgic tests were performed on the objects.
The theory that they put forth was that these were portions of meteorites. They did not know they were removed from the human body.
Amazingly, the New Mexico Tech Lab report revealed that the elements in the implants were composed of meteorites so rare, only a few had ever been found. At this point, scanning electron microscope analysis was conducted on the implants. The results revealed the implants were manufactured and not naturally occurring meteorites. Amazingly, results showed the implants had been connected to the patient's nerve endings.
The second set of tests following some of the tests that were run at New Mexico was run by University of California at San Diego.
The laboratory results from the University of California at San Diego confirmed the earlier tests. Astonishingly, a portion of the metal analyzed in the implants was extraterrestrial and did not come from Earth.
Some of the elements that were found in combination were of non-terrestrial or extraterrestrial origin.
The evidence is overwhelming. The implications are staggering. In each case, the chain of evidence has been documented, and the test results are shocking.
This could be the proof that science has been looking for. The implications of this discovery are worldwide and affect every single living human being.
Alien Jesus 2. The Jesus Seed. Metro Radio.
Now, another thing I find strange is that throughout history, everybody that describes aliens tends to describe them in kind of the same way, with the big eyes, grey, greenish in colour. They describe their bodies pretty much the same, don't they, throughout history?
Well, you see, that is backing up the argument that they've been here, they've been on every continent, because all of these different tribes and different races all over the world have all had the similar experience. And yet, if it's true that governments know that alien life exists out there, and maybe aliens are still visiting this planet, that would explain what happened at this press conference led by Clifford Stone, talking to ex-members of NASA and the scientific community. They were able to catalogue different types of alien, different types of grey.
My question is to Clifford Stone. You said that you had seen aliens on a craft that had crashed. I wondered if you could describe what they looked like.
I could, but it would probably take a whole lot of time. The reason I state that, when I got out in 1989, we had cataloged 57 different species. You have individuals that look very much like you and myself that could walk among us and you wouldn't even notice the difference, except for some of the things that they might be able to go ahead, even in a dark room, and touch an object and go ahead and identify what color that object might be. They would have a heightened sense of smell, sight, hearing. The situation is that you have various types of what we normally call grays. We didn't call them grays in the military, but you had at least 3 types of the grays. You had some that were much taller than we were. The unique thing that I'd like to point out for the most part is that the entities that we did catalog were in fact humanoid. Now this created a situation where the scientific community was trying to figure out why that would be the case, because you would expect that if life evolved on other planets, that they would take on some type of other being, so to speak, not necessarily look humanoid or be bipedal such as we are. But apparently we got quite a few of the species out there that are humanoid in appearance, and that creates a question that yet has to be answered by science.
The next thing you're about to hear you will find absolutely amazing. A therapist tries to talk to an alien. He can't get his point across.
Just gonna sit there. It's okay. No, calm down. Calm down. Not gonna do anything. It's okay. It's okay. It's alright. I'm not gonna move. Okay? No one is gonna hurt you anymore. I won't hurt you anymore. I promise. Want some more water? Let me give you some more water. Go. Go. Okay. Like that. Good. Yeah. Kind of like that. Okay. Show me what you were using in the phone. No, it's okay. It's alright. It's alright. No! Please. Okay. No more. No more.
In this next clip, he tries very hard to calm an alien that seems to be getting more and more fractious, more and more nervous about what's going on.
I don't know what you want. Do you want to leave? Do you want to not be in the freezer? It's okay. It's alright. Whatever you want. I'm trying to get some help. But I don't know what you want. Make me understand. Maybe you can help me understand. It's alright. Calm down. I'm not going to hurt you. No, I am not going to hurt you anymore. I am not. I promise. I am not going to hurt you. This. I'm not going to hurt you. It's okay. All right. It's okay.
In this next piece, he realizes that the communication from the alien is not just verbal. It's starting to hurt his head. So perhaps the alien was attempting to talk to him in a telepathic way, as many people believe that is how they would communicate with us. Even so, it is still far from a calm situation.
I don't know what you mean. I don't know what this means. More water? You want more water? Okay. No, it's too much. Please, stop. It hurts my head. It hurts. Yes. Ah. I don't know what you mean. Okay. It's all right. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. It's okay. You can go back in, just whatever it's all right.
And finally, the therapist gets ready to release the alien and set him free. Again, a very uncomfortable time.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. I'm just going to pick this up. I'm just going to pick it up. I'm going to leave. It's okay. It's all right. I'm going to go. All right. I'm going to turn it off. All right, I won't. I'm just going to walk over here. And I'm going to go. Okay. It's all right.
The Jesus Seed.
Now, the one thing you hear when you're talking about all things alien is the distinct lack of proof. Everybody keeps going around, but if there was proof, then we'd believe. Well, one day in October 1932, after spending several weeks looking for gold in a ravine at the base of the San Pedro Mountains in Wyoming in the States, Cecil Main and Frank Carr spotted some indications of gold in one of the walls of a cave. So they decided they were going to blast it apart with dynamite. And once the clouds of dust had begun to disperse, the two men looked through the hole left behind, and there was a tiny, natural cave. Inside was a small ledge, and to the astonishment of both the prospectors, they could see a tiny elfin-like creature sitting cross-legged upon it, with its arms folded across its waist. Looking closer, they discovered it was no longer alive. It had been mummified in the cave. First and foremost, it was exceptionally small, less than 7 inches tall. As it sat there, if it had stretched out, its full height would have been about 14 inches. But it didn't seem to be a child. It resembled a smirking old man with a low brow, a broad flat nose, large eyes, one of which was half closed, and very wide mouth with thin lips. Its skin tanned, bronze, heavily wrinkled, its body barrel-shaped, its hands large, long fingers with minute, readily visible fingernails. The top of its head was abnormally flat and covered in a dark gelatinous substance, eclipsing all but a fringe of hair around its edge. The bewildered prospectors carefully lifted this little thing off its ledge and took it back with them when they returned to Casper in Wyoming, where it attracted an immense amount of interest. It became known as Pedro, named after the mountain, and it was bought by a car dealer called Ivan Goodman. And when scientists heard about this, they were skeptical. They presumed it was a hoax. Nevertheless, after being shown the mummy, anthropologist Dr. Henry Shapiro from the American Museum of Natural History was intrigued enough to organize an X-ray. If it had been a hoax carefully constructed, it would have no internal substance, and an X-ray would swiftly expose it. However, the X-ray plates confirmed that this creature possessed an irrefutably man-like skeleton, despite its tiny stature. It had a complete set of ribs, fully formed arms and legs, with all bones readily discernible, a backbone that had once been perfectly formed, but had subsequently suffered an injury. The creature had a fractured left collarbone. It seemed that this little person had met his death through some violent attack, accounting not only for the injuries, but also for its flattened head and the dark gelatinous substance. When examined, it was found that the skull had been smashed with an extremely heavy blow, and the dark substance was exposed brain tissue and congealed blood. As for the age of this small creature, the severe damage the skull had taken, they were unable to reveal a precise age. But it did have adult characteristics. In babies and small children, it would not have been as formed. This was a grown-up. He had a full set of teeth, with large, noticeably pointed canines, more so than human beings. Its overall morphology, internally and externally, indicated it was 65 years old when he died. In Shapiro's opinion, it was not from recent times, but dated back into prehistory. In 1950, Goodman died, and Pedro became the property of Leonard Wadler, and then vanished from headlines. Today, its location is unknown, but there are photographs of it in countless scientific magazines, including its X-rays. Professor George Gill claimed it was a grossly malformed infant or a fetus suffering from anencephaly, a severe condition in which most of the cranium and brain have failed to develop. However, it was proven to be 65 years old. And that is irrefutable. It is now considered that this belonged to a race of an unknown prehistoric American tribe. A very aggressive race of pygmies, or little people. According to some traditions, pygmies have even been known to kill their own kind when they become ill, beheading them or smashing their skulls. It's all very well to think about things such as that. And yet over 250 scientific professionals who have seen the body, witnessed the X-rays, they have said categorically that there has never been any tribe on Earth like this. This creature is not of this Earth. Now, over the years, people have claimed to have had direct dealings, literally a close encounter, with people not of this Earth. Now, okay, most people would be discounted immediately, and yet, how far would someone go to prove that existence, that they've come face to face with an alien? And what if aliens were not as friendly as we choose to believe? Well, one such man was a contractor for the American government, building secret locations in the deserts of Arizona and many of the other states in America. His name was Paul Schneider. Along with special forces, he got into a fight with aliens. Not only was his stomach ripped open, his hand was melted. Now imagine just how much heat it would take to do something like that. Now this man has suffered greatly. And he also talks about members of the special forces being killed. Around the time that Paul Schneider worked for the government, 3 special forces representatives went missing. Listen to his incredible story.
Now, another thing I want to reach to you is that during the unbelievable part, I was involved in building another base inside of Dulce, New Mexico, which is Los Alamos Laboratory. It's a biological laboratory. On the southwest part of the Archuleta Mesa, we built an underground facility, a better part of 3 cubic miles hollowed out underground. Then to the southwest of that, we were in the process of the early stages of building. We drilled 4 large tunnel-like holes. Some of them ran 2.5 miles under the surface. Number of the original wells or drilling machines that were used were at the rate of 2 miles a day. It was fairly rapid. The equipment kept coming up broken. So we wanted to go down and we wanted to send somebody down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on. Well, to our total surprise, first of all, the government knew all about it. They didn't tell anybody. When I saw Green Beret and Black Beret people encamped inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up. The gig was up. First of all, I knew all about the alien agenda. I'll explain that in a few minutes. The large alien grays had been encamped there for as best as believed possible about 400 or 500 years. It had been one of their internal bases. And we'd drilled holes right on top of it. All the stinking air, all the black sooty air came right out as soon as the first hole was sunk, and all this soot came up, and well, that's when all the hell broke loose, really, all started. Anyway, after we drilled all 4 holes, it took about 2 days to drill all 4 of them. And when you build an underground base, you drill 4 basic holes, and then you build called stopes or cross-member holes across, and then you use blasting equipment and special blasting equipment by the analyzation of the rock formation, and you literally blast out or tunnel out or deflagrate or melt rock out to build the large rooms that are required for this underground base. Well, in this process, I was lowered down the basket of one of these holes, and about from me to this elderly woman here in the front was sitting a 7-foot-tall alien gray. The stench was worse than the worst garbage can you can imagine. The person was the entity was absolutely horrible. I didn't waste any time. I reached for my pistol. At that time, as an engineer, I didn't have time to carry all the Falderall of one of these big submachine guns that all the sea spray and the yellow fruit and all the outer perimeter and inner perimeter security people carried. I carried a little Walther PPK pistol with a 9-shot clip. This is in late August of 1979. Now, you got a regular suit of clothes, you got a regular clothes on, plus you're in almost like a spacesuit environment, and you're reaching for a gun. It's not the easiest thing to do, and then to pop a clip in it and start shooting. And I killed 2 of them. Yes, they're mortal, and they do die. However, in the process, one of them did this. All I remember is that he just kind of waved his hand in front of his chest, and the next thing I know, this blue beam hit me and just literally opened me up like a fish, and burnt my fingers right off of me. And it was some form of electrical force, because the kind of like being hit by a lightning bolt, burned all my toenails off of me. Completely crispy crittered my left foot, burnt the shoe right off of me. All I remember was the smoking remains, and I'm still conscious, but in and out of, I didn't remember much. And there was a Green Beret that was right behind me that risked his life. In fact, he died. But he risked his life. He shoved me back in the basket and hit the button and took me up. And I wouldn't be alive talking to you today if it wasn't for him. I'm forever indebted. He lost his life. 66 Secret Service agents, Green Berets, Black Berets, crack troops lost their lives because the government, our United States government, lied did not tell us anything about the alien threat. There's a war underneath there, and I'm talking dead serious. It's been going on since that time. Since late August of 1979, our military, the Russian military, basically the militaries of the world, have been in constant conflict with the outer space alien. The small gray, the large gray, the reptilian, the whole thing. There are 11 distinct races of aliens. 2 are benevolent. 1 had to leave here in a hurry because their world is under attack, both on the surface as well as underground there, the Pleiadians. They're familiar, maybe some of you are familiar with that. Would some of you raise your hands who've heard of Billy Meyer and some of the, very good, about half the group. Well, Billy Meyer is one of these lucky people that they figured, well, he's kind of a simple type, we'll show him everything. Well, these are the benevolent aliens, and they've been here helping us. In fact, I have a picture of one of the aliens been working for the United States Pentagon for the last 58 years. His name is Val Valiant Thor. He's right here.
Alien Jesus 2, the Jesus Seed.
Well, we do get ourselves around, don't we? At the present moment, I'm in the United States. I'm at the very first ever museum of alien studies. And it's something you might not be aware of, but over 150 million Americans believe that aliens are real. And this museum here in Portland, Oregon, is an international research center based on the varieties of alien contact, from nice and gentle, benevolent experiences to contacting people who have been horrifically abducted and looking into the traumas that they have gone through. And it's quite amazing what they have in this museum. So I just thought we would take a look at just some of the things that they have managed to document. And it's quite amazing. I'm in a very large room at the present moment. You can probably tell it's an ounce echoey. There's 1 or 2 other people here as well doing a little bit of research for newspapers. It's kind of a press thing they've got kicking. Here at the museum, they have on a piece of stone, you know how fossils are laid down? They've got solid rock with an alien life form captured in it. It is a very, very bizarre looking thing, but it does look like the misshapen, flattened head of an alien. They've got petrified bone with reptilian skin on it. Now, this is far too big to be a lizard, far too small to be a dinosaur. It's an amazing thing. They've got petroglyphs with pictures of aliens wearing spaceship, with a spaceship behind them, wearing helmets, just like we would picture spacemen to do that now. They've got a golden nail captured in quartz, you know, in the same way that that tiny mosquito was captured in Jurassic Park. They've got a golden nail. Now, this is a nail unlike any on planet Earth. They've got a carbonized footprint from millions of years ago. They've got a piece of petrified bone. Now, this is bone that's been laid down into the earth for thousands of years, and yet when you take it out, it glows bright green. It's absolutely an amazing looking thing. It's in front of me now. What you have to do is you have to pull the drawer back just like that, and then it glows, and then the glow disappears. Then you push the little door back again, and it's in the dark, so that every time you open it up, this glow returns. I don't think there's anything on planet Earth without electricity that can do something like that. They've got hieroglyphs trapped on a type of metal that nobody can decide what it is. Nobody has any idea what this metal is. It's kind of slightly lighter than copper, just it doesn't exist on Earth, and yet it's got hieroglyphs in it. There's a holographic message on a piece of broken stone that they've got here as well. And I know you can, yes, we can look at each one of these and say, well, I'm not really sure. They've got a piece of prehistoric rock with an alien handprint on it. It's not the print of a dinosaur. It's not the print of a Homo sapien. It's something else. How can they explain what it is? They've also got a thing called a tetragonal. Now, I've never come across this before, but apparently it's a fuel cell, and it's attached itself to a piece of stone, again, after being laid down. So this means back, not just thousands, millions of years ago, aliens were coming here, because some of these things have been laid down into the earth, and they can be tested and dated, and this is a UFO fuel cell. Now, for those people that say, impossible, they've got one here. They've got one here. A UFO fuel cell, and it's welded into this petroglyph through time. They've found the skull of a grey, you know, the deeper set eyes and the huge skull. 300 million years ago. Now, remembering no religious work claims there were about at that time. 300 million years ago, they have proof of an old woman embedded in stone. Now, this woman is not a cave woman. She's not a Neanderthal. She's a relatively sophisticated-looking woman. 300 million years ago. How do you explain that? There are so many things to look at, and yet one of the reasons that I'm here is fairly straightforward. I'm here because they have proof, and if they have proof, we certainly want to see it, because it is in this museum here in Oregon where they did a lot of research about a creature called a Mothman. Grey in colour, large pair of folded wings, standing on two human-like legs. The eyes seem to be roughly where the chest is, not without a head. Bizarre. And this first showed itself to a guy called Roger Scarberry's wife and a couple of friends. They were driving by a disused wartime explosives factory near Point Pleasant in West Virginia, 11:30 at night. They saw this thing, freaked, and drove at speed. And yet, when they started talking about it, it wasn't the first recorded sighting. It was something exactly the same. Now, you know, if you make up something like that, nobody's going to back you up, but other people had described the same thing. At Point Pleasant, driving down Route 2 along the Ohio River in 1961, a car driver and a passenger were terrified by a similar creature that was standing in the middle of the road as the car approached. It opened its wings with a wingspan of about 10 feet and took off vertically up in the air. Absolutely amazing. The Mothman. And I know there's been a film out called The Mothman Prophecies, where it's supposed to have given visions of the future. And yet, this type of thing, commonplace, in total, about 30 or 40 people ended up seeing the Mothman.
Alien Jesus 2. The Jesus Seed. Metro Radio.
The Jesus Seed on Metro. And for those of you that think, well, surely if there were aliens anywhere, they would stay miles away from human beings. Maybe in the desert areas. But it seems every desert area has a battle on it. And perhaps that's why, whilst fighting in such a desert, we heard about this.
It was an amazing show that you did.
Well, bless you. Thank you for that.
It just brought back some memories of when I was out in Iraq in 2003.
Yeah?
Me and my mates were in the Land Rover going across the desert at a place called Shaiba.
Right.
And it was pitch black, middle of the night, and we were just going along checking the perimeters of the fencing and that, basically.
Right.
And we went over this like sand dune, and we're seeing this creature that it just came out of nowhere. And it reminded us a bit of the story that you said about the little guy buried underneath in Peru somewhere, was it?
Yeah, but what did it look like, this thing?
It almost exactly how you described this creature on your show.
Right.
And it's hard. It's hard to explain it now, like, because it's been a long time since then. But
you all saw the same thing, you guys.
Well, there was me and me driver. He was like he was driving, and there was a lad in the back.
Right.
And as I say, we were driving along, and all of a sudden we're seeing it it was as if we just caught it in with headlights.
Yeah.
And the eyes like shone back at us, big, like huge, like saucer-like eyes. And
roughly how big? Because we were talking about these things being quite relatively small things.
Well, as I say, all we could see at our first glimpse was the eyes.
Right.
We didn't really get much of a glimpse of it, but we followed it. But we followed it. It just like disappeared, and then just like reappeared. I mean, we were travelling along in the Land Rover at a good like 50 mile an hour across the desert,
right?
And it kept on appearing in front of her.
So it was travelling at 50 mile an hour.
It must have been, because as I say, I mean, it just kept on appearing like on a different sand dune in front of her.
Isn't it weird though? Because when we did that, because the whole shows about the first Alien Jesus and the second one, the Jesus Seed, is basically backing up that there's an awful lot of people seeing an awful lot of things that nobody's got any kind of explanation for. The last thing I expected was for two lads bopping over Iraq in a Land Rover to have seen one of the things that kind of sounds. It just sounds too out of this world to stand any chance of being true.
I've never really actually told the story to anybody else
because it sounds crackers.
Because it does sound absolutely crackers.
Yeah.
I mean, the lad who was driving, I mean, he's in Australia now.
Right.
But
you saw it clearly, so we've got no reason to doubt you. And
I saw it clearly. It was small.
Right.
And as I say, the eyes were what stood out the most, obviously, because I mean, when the headlights caught them, it looked at what, but it didn't it had like an intelligence there that wasn't like animal like intelligence, if you know what I mean.
Right.
It had more of something about it, but I remember it had like a bit of a snout.
Right.
And it had like it had like almost like a tusk, you know, like koi carp, how they have like the...
Yeah, like little barbel bits at the side of the mouth. Yeah.
It had like something like that, like coming over its mouth.
Were you ever tempted, because let's face it, you're there to protect your, the edge of your fence kind of thing.
Yeah.
And presumed you were armed. Did you think about having a pop, or was that not allowed?
To be honest, I didn't think...
Can I just say, on the behalf of anybody that's seeking intergalactic intelligence, I do understand shooting an alien's probably a bit of a no-no, but it's just you're in the desert, it's Iraq. If ever you had an excuse, it could have been maybe it's there.
To be honest, I don't even think we could have gotten a trace on it. It was going that quick. It was. We never actually seen it move.
Right.
It was just like there 1 minute and then
gone.
Then gone, then somewhere else.
Right. But you kept seeing it time and time again.
We kept seeing it time and time again, aye.
So it was following, it was running ahead of you?
Aye. But I mean, as you say, there's nothing that I know of that can travel at 50 mile an hour.
No.
Well, we're going to tell the lad in the back, because I shouldn't be saying this, but he was asleep.
Right, yeah.
But we kind of, once we couldn't find it anymore, we kind of just looked at each other and we're like, what on earth was that?
Yeah.
And as I say, I mean, we thought about putting it down and we're reporting that, but we thought not, because we'll get the Mickey taken out of it if we say something about that.
That's the rest of your life and your time there taken, I would imagine.
Aye.
But you see, this is the thing because when we talk about people that have seen stuff, and even people that have seen stuff in Britain, last night I saw a UFO, or I saw a ghost, or I saw this, or I saw that, the abominable snowman, the Yeti, the Loch Ness monster. Everybody just kind of says, well, it's pointless me saying anything because I'm going to get the Mickey ripped out of me to such a degree it's not worth the hassle. So a lot of people wouldn't say stuff like that. But I think it's fascinating that you... Because I do think it's different. If you'd have just seen that, that's one thing. But you both saw it. So it couldn't possibly have been imagination, a trick of the light, or any of those things, because you both saw it.
We've both seen it clearly.
Alien Jesus 2. The Jesus Seed. Metro Radio. Alien Jesus 2. The Jesus Seed. Metro Radio.
There's so many questions, and yet we want to move on to another topic covered by the Jesus Seed here on Metro Radio. Photographs of life on Mars. Now, once again, if they can prove life on Mars, that there ever has been life on Mars, it completely flattens most of the religious books that claim that Earth is the only inhabited planet because that was the one chosen by God. If there's life on other planets, that's wrong. Is there proof about life on Mars?
Science might be trying to prove that there's life beyond Earth, but some believers claim they've got all the little green facts that they need. Yep, palling around with aliens. Miles O'Brien, that's his department. He's CNN's resident space junkie, and hopefully he'll join us live after his piece.
We met Milton Torres in Miami, who 50 years ago spotted a huge, fast-moving object in the crosshairs of his fighter jet. No doubt in his mind.
It was some design of an aircraft by some space alien.
We talked to the sixth man to walk on the moon, Edgar Mitchell. He is sure aliens have visited us, and the government knows.
The Ruth region is still a secret, his power and control.
Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer.
We went to the scene of the granddaddy of all UFO sightings, Roswell, New Mexico, and met Frankie Rowe, who says she played with some remarkable metal from an alien craft.
And when you would wad it up and put it in your hand, it would disappear.
In New York City, we met Mark, just Mark, who claims he was abducted by aliens.
Do you have any idea what they wanted? No.
We traveled to the Earth's listening post in Northern California, also known as the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, where they're listening for alien signals. Yes, I said alien signals. We spoke with Jill Tarter.
Are we alone? How might we find out? What does that tell us about ourselves and our place in the universe?
We spoke to an intrepid astrobiologist, Chris McKay, who is helping to hunt for life on Mars.
Everything I know about the universe suggests that, yes, life should be common.
And we talked to a spacecraft designer who wonders if this picture from Mars may be the Holy Grail.
It's not a 100%, no doubt in my mind that it's not life. It's going to rock the world when life is found off of the Earth.
Miles O'Brien, he didn't get abducted by aliens.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I got to talk about this picture a little bit because it's fascinating to me. Did you take a close look? We have a graphic.
Yes, matter of fact, I did. It looks like an itty-bitty little insect or worm or something beneath the rock.
I've been saying rigatoni. Let's zoom in and take a look at the rigatoni. This was shot by the Opportunity. You see it there, Kira?
Yep, I've got it.
Okay. This was shot by the Opportunity rover. This happened on the 23rd of February, 2004. Now, it dug this thing up, and the problem is Opportunity was not rigged up with anything to do further study on fossils. So if that is a fossil, we don't know. It could be the Holy Grail. I think they need to send another mission to this spot, don't you?
That's a great idea. You've got connections there. Did anything surprise you? Did you at any moment think,
I walked into this very much a skeptic because there's something that's hard to get around. Space is a big place, Kira. Our little Milky Way is a teeny little part of the universe, and it's 130,000 light years across. That's big distance. So if, in fact, there is life out there, which most people believe seems likely, there's so much distance to travel to come visit. But maybe, just maybe, in our 500 years of understanding physics, we've missed something, like wormholes or black holes or time travel or something. But all I can say is, you can't, if you're going to accept the notion that we are not alone in the universe, it's logical to say it is not impossible that they have come to visit, right?
Alien Jesus 2. The Jesus Seed. Metro Radio.
Alan Robson with you. At the present moment, you can hear an aeroplane flying overhead, very similar to the one that dropped us down here to record this amazing show. And so many things that we've been telling you across tonight, I know you will find unbelievable. But much is unbelievable that really happened. And what if? We ask that question over and over and over again tonight. And yet, following Alien Jesus, we got an email from a guy who works at a university in Leeds saying, what real proof have you got that aliens visited this earth? And if that kind of proof exists, show me or shut up. Fair enough. The Bible tells us that God created Adam and Eve a few thousand years ago. But what was happening on earth millions of years ago? 50,000 years ago. Well, explain this if you can. Over the last few decades, miners who live in South Africa have dug up metal spheres. They don't know where they're from. They're about 1 inch or so in diameter. Some are etched with 3 parallel grooves running around the equator. It's composed of a solid bluish metal, but they don't know what type of metal it is. And the kicker here, the thing that causes the biggest problem, is that the rock that these metal balls were found in were Precambrian, 2.8 million years ago. So on Earth, before human beings were here, there was something creating etched metal balls made out of a bluish metal that does not exist on Earth, and they have been found in South Africa. And they've got many of them. 2.8 billion, not million, 2.8 billion years old. Human beings were not anywhere close at that time. Who made them? And what about the Dropa stones? In 1938, an archaeological expedition up into the Bayan Karaula mountains of China discovered some caves that obviously had been occupied by some bizarre ancient culture. Buried in the dust on the cave floor were hundreds of stone discs. Each one measured 9 inches in diameter. Each had a circle cut into the centre and was etched with a spiral groove. It looked like some kind of ancient phonograph, but it came from 12,000 years ago. That spiral groove was composed of hieroglyphics that tell the story of spaceships crash landing in the mountains. The ships were piloted, and this is what's written on the stones, by people who called themselves the Dropa, and their descendants were found in the cave. The bodies looked very human-like, except had a totally differently configured rib cage. Explain that. Now, when we were doing Alien Jesus, we told you about the Antikythera mechanism. Now, this was found in a shipwreck, and it just showed this incredible machine. A machine that was made 80 years before Christ. An X-ray of the mechanism showed it to be a sophisticated system of differential gears, like the sort you use on cars, from 80 BC. 2,000 years before that kind of technology was available. There's the Ica stones. The father of cultural anthropology is a man called Dr. Javier Cabrera. He's based in Ica in Peru. And he found hundreds of ceremonial burial stones in the tombs of the ancient Incas. The stones bear etchings, and a lot of them are quite sexually graphic, but that was fairly commonplace at the time. But others depict open heart surgery and brain transplants. The most astonishing etchings show dinosaurs, Brontosaurus, Triceratops, Stegosaurus, and pterosaurs. Now, the fact of the matter is, Dinosaurs had not existed on Earth when the Incas were alive. They would never ever have seen them. So how could they draw them accurately? There is another famous thing called the Baghdad Battery, 2,000 years old. It was found in the ruins of a Parthian village, 248 BC. And inside there is a battery. All you have to do is fill it with acid or alkaline to produce an electrical charge. Now this battery may have been used for electroplating objects with gold, but the battery would not be discovered for another 1,800 years. So who gave them that technology? Now you see, I don't care if this guy works for a university or whatever. Explain any one of them to me. Explain where these things came from. And then, of course, miraculously, a place at Saqqara in Egypt, 1898, they found a model aeroplane with a fuselage, wings, and a tail. The object is so aerodynamic it can glide, and the object apparently had been discovered in Central America. It's 1,000 years old, it's made of gold, and it is identical to a delta wing aircraft, and it resembles, to be quite honest, if you have a look at this, go on the internet and look up the things from the Saqqara tomb in Egypt that was found in 1898. It's 1,000 years old, and it looks like the space shuttle. Explain, how did that work? There's also impossible fossils. Now, you know, if you go to a lot of cliff faces, you can find fossils. Fossils we all learned when we were at school. They appear in rocks. But there's a few fossils that don't make any historical sense. There's a fossil of a human handprint found in limestone 110 million years old. Now remember the numbers, because there were no humans on the planet then. 110 million years old. They also found a fossilized human finger in the Canadian Arctic, 110 million years old. And what appears to be the fossil of a human footprint wearing a sandal that is 600 million years old. There were no humans here. Who made that footprint? There's another thing called the Coso artifact. Well, mineral hunting in the mountains of California, 1961, a guy called Wallace Lane found a rock. They thought it was a geode, you know, and they could sell it at a gem shop. But on cutting it open, he found an object inside it made of what seemed to be like a white porcelain. And in the centre of the shaft of shiny metal, experts estimated that if it was a geode, it should have taken 500,000 years for this fossil-encrusted nodule to form. Further investigation revealed that the porcelain was surrounded by a hexagonal casing, and an X-ray revealed a tiny spring at one end like a spark plug. The artifact itself has been identified by experts as the champion spark plug. But the thing was, it's 500,000 years old. How could that be possible? And you know, the people who say, what proof is there that other technologies had been here before, have patently never ever looked for themselves. Now, we weren't around 65 million years ago. Never mind people who could work metal. So how does science explain metallic tubes dug out of a 65 million year old Cretaceous chalk in France? A block of coal was broken open to find a metal cube that had been worked on by intelligent hands 65 million years ago. They found a nail in sandstone from the Mesozoic era, and there's thousands of these anomalies. But the last one I'm going to leave you with are the giant stone balls of Costa Rica. Workmen hacking in the jungle of Costa Rica were clearing an area so they could build a banana plantation in the 1930s, and they came across dozens of stone balls, perfect spheres, and they varied in size from as small as a tennis ball to 8 feet in diameter, weighing 16 ton. Now, although the great stone balls are clearly man-made, it's unknown who made them, for what purpose, and what they achieved. Intelligent humans obviously if you take all of this information into conclusion, you have to say we were obviously on Earth, or someone was obviously on Earth 65 million years ago. Now remember, we talk about the time of Jesus 2,000 years ago. We're now talking between 65 million and 2 billion years ago, life on this planet. There were intelligent beings and civilizations existed on Earth far beyond our recorded history. And if anybody, wherever you happen to work, wants to question those things, come up with some answers for me. I would love to hear them. It's the kind of thing that the people in that huge building at the end of this square would never even want to listen to. Alan Robson, The Jesus Seed, on Night House for Metro Radio.
Alien Jesus 2, The Jesus Seed, Metro Radio.
It's always good when on the Night Owls programme you lot ring us and tell us something intriguing that we didn't know. And frankly, it happens pretty much every night.
My brother was ex-military, and I know a few lads that were RAF and stuff as well.
Right.
There is a base on the west coast of Scotland called Machrihanish.
Machrihanish? I haven't heard of it, but okay.
Yeah, well, believe me, they've said there's an awful lot of funny stuff flies out of there. And to corroborate that was, do you remember the big aircraft carrier that was in the North Keys about a couple of months ago?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, there's a guy with lots of gold braid on his cap who was Scottish, and I was speaking to him, and he was from the west coast of Scotland.
Right.
And I mentioned that about Machrihanish, and he goes, yes, well, the least said about that place the better, I think, don't you? So there's lots of stuff that's going on that we're not allowed to know.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, when you say there's lots going on, you see, some people will read from that, oh, well, they're obviously testing military aircraft that we haven't seen yet, and they're keeping it on the sly. Or are there bases where there's integration with aliens? Because some people believe that, you know, that alien craft have landed at military air bases and the governments know exactly what's going on.
There's got to be something in it, because as you just rightly said a few minutes ago, aircraft, other types of aircraft, noticing things that they cannot explain. Now, these guys are pilots, they're used to the way systems work, and for them to be unsure of what's happened certainly corroborates that fact, I think, you know.
Now, I think an awful lot of you that have watched a lot of science fiction television and movies will know SETI. It's an organisation set up by the American government to search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And they have been watching the skies and, more importantly, listening for decades now. And they have found things that they cannot explain. Because something, sound waves, sent from outside our solar system, they have picked up. Have a listen to this. I don't know about you, Paolo, but if you have been listening for decades using highly sophisticated radio telescopes pointing out there, and you've had nothing back for years, and all of a sudden something like that should come from out there in space, that vastness of it all, and all of a sudden you get that, you can imagine your heart absolutely racing. But the one thing I want to put to you is they pointed their equipment towards Saturn. And can you remember watching documentaries? Maybe it's even at school, because at school we did this thing on Alexander Graham Bell and sending the first telephone signal, and it was distorted and you could hardly make out what the other person was saying, and it had all of this kind of crackle and hiss and in the background, and you're thinking, how the hell are we ever going to get a highly sophisticated mobile phone that you can take anywhere on Earth and hear your friends and family clearly? when they pointed that radio telescope towards Saturn, they must have wet themselves when they got this back, because does it not sound to you like there is an intelligence there trying to reach out and be heard? Is this the alien equivalent of that first early telephone conversation from Alexander Graham Bell? Imagine for 1 second that they are reaching out to us.
Alien Jesus 2. The Jesus Seed. Metro Radio.